Good afternoon on the webinar. Looking forward to having a chat to you about effort and rubrics from a growth mindset perspective, but I'll give people just another minute or two to log in and get themselves sorted out, to get their coffee organised. We'll only go for about an hour, maybe 40 minutes. But as we're getting ready to start, if you want to put a message in the chat box, just let me know that you can see the screen and hear my voice. That'd be great. Then we can know we're ready to rock and roll for the next half hour or so. Right, I can see a few people typing away. Great, all good, Jacqueline. Saw you were there early. It's nice to see people. Dean, you can't see anything yet. You can't see effort and rubrics from a growth mindset perspective. I'm not showing you my smiling face today, just to save on bandwidth. Yep, there we go. We've got it sorted out. Fantastic. While we're just letting a few people get into the room, and it's slowly here, I can see the numbers going up. Just wanted to talk about sort of why you guys got this invitation. It wasn't an open invitation to come to this webinar. You're all people that have worked with me before, that know me through one avenue or another. And you're my special group. You're my group that I'm trying to nurture, my group that has shown a commitment to this work, and that I want to sort of, keep giving you the sort of material that's going to keep pushing you along and helping you become more and more growth mindset teachers. And this is the space where I share some of my latest thinking. I give you some tools for developing learning agility in your students, and ask for a bit of feedback from you as well. Like, I'm testing these ideas. They're not fully formed. I reckon they're pretty good. They're there, but I want to share them with you and ask for your feedback in a really legitimate way. There's a couple of people I'm noticing on the chat. You're not meant to see my camera. Oh, Katie, how are you from South Africa? Good to see you here. Getting all over the place here. People who can't hear me, no use to me writing that, is it? So if you can't hear me, try turning on your speakers or check your settings. Others can hear me, so here we go. Yeah, so as I'm saying, I'm here to try and share some of this and get some feedback for you, from you about some of these ideas. And I also wanted to take a moment, again, as people are still logging in, to share a little bit of news with you. I'm really excited at the moment. I've spent the last couple of weeks sort of gearing up for the end of the year, and I am excited to let you know that in response to a whole lot of requests that I've had, I am launching a brand new Habits of Mind workshop starting term 4 in Australia. So I will be in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and Adelaide running a new growth mindset workshop as of the start of term 4, and you can expect some information in your email about that soon. But even more exciting than that, I know that some of you are engaged in whole school transformation efforts around growth mindset. You're bringing growth mindset across the school through your staff, through your school community, and in your students, obviously. And I have created a very, very special event that, again, I'll send you information about in a week or so, called Transforming Teaching and Learning with Growth Mindsets. It's going to be run once off, Friday the 25th of January. That's the day before the Australia Day weekend, where I'm going to invite you to send teams of your teachers to Brisbane for the day. Lovely Brisbane. And we're going to talk through how to design and use the resources I've produced to deliver growth mindsets to your entire staff, and to do that as a whole school initiative across the year. So we'll be looking at the resources I've produced that we captured in South Africa. We'll be looking at developing a plan for you delivering that learning in your own school settings. And I'm really, really excited about that day. I'm hoping to get a big group along. And my other big bit of information, as the last few people jump online, is that the growth mindset teacher workshops are now online. So you can do my whole growth mindset teacher workshop online beginning from the start of term 4, and you'll have access to it till the start of term 1. Ebony, you should be able to hear sound. I'll just write this one message and then I need to move on. All right, so now folks, while I jump into this webinar, I need to change screens. I can't see your comments and the things you're typing while I'm in the middle of the webinar, but I will flick out of it from time to time to look at your questions and to ask for your feedback. So let's launch into it now. I'm not ignoring you if you put something in the chat box. I just can't see you during this. So, two topics to talk about during the webinar. The first one, obviously, effort. I want to spend some time exploring effort. And then once we've explored that for a little bit, we're going to talk about rubrics and how we change the way we design rubrics to send more positive growth mindset moves, to make them more growth orientated. So, yeah, when we think about effort, it's a bit of a fuzzy concept, I find. You know, we sort of recognize it, but at the same time, we're not quite sure what we mean about it when we talk about it. It's often confused just with time and energy. And strangely to me, it's not always linked to progress or achievement. You know, some kids seem to achieve, they get our rewards and our recognitions, our grades, without a whole lot of effort. And other kids can put in a lot of effort, but not reach the standards and not get the achievements that we're hoping them to get. So how does this all fit together? We've got to be clear about what it is we're talking about. I did a quick sort of survey of some of the schools I work with, and these were some of the examples of the ways effort were being recognised in classrooms and in school reports in some cases. You know, 4-star effort, there's this sort of linear idea that it goes from good to bad, or something about the amount of effort. You know, there's exceptional, great, good effort. Interestingly, looking at the effort meter on the right there, the exceptional effort, I worked hard on this, I gave my all to this. Doesn't say anything about it. Now, I want to point out here, this is not an mindset we've been talking about. It's a growth mindset. So when we talk about effort devoid of the growth, I think we're missing something here. You know, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star effort. It's about some sort of quality here. If we move on, we get more sophisticated versions of effort. This is one from Bob Marzano. And I'm a big Bob Marzano fan. He does fantastic work. But a couple of things struck me about this effort and achievement rubrics. First off, they're separate. Yeah, there's a rubric for effort and there's a rubric for achievement. And, you know, that bothers me a bit. Looking at the effort rubric, I worked on this task until it was complete. Right? So there's something there about persistence. I pushed myself to continue working the task even when difficulties arose and the solution was not immediately apparent. So there's something in there about how you worked when the solution was not immediately apparent, and that probably starts to touch on habits of mind. I view difficulties that arose as opportunities to strengthen my understanding. That's the top version of the effort. So that brings in some of that growth mindset attitude. But apparently the difference between that level 4 effort and level 3 effort is only the mindset part of it. The last sentence, I view difficulties that arose as opportunities to strengthen my understanding, isn't there in section 3. And by the time you get down to 2 and 1, we're talking about some or very little. So, you know, I'm not sure how that all works, and I'm not sure how linked the effort and achievement is. Then we get ones like this. You know, these are sort of catch-all examples of effort rubrics. it talks about lots of factors. It talks about poor, inconsistent, consistent. So there's an element of when you're applying effort or how often you're applying effort. And my feeling when I see these ones is that these are probably more the result of the effort, the outcome of the effort, rather than the description of the effort itself. So there's an element here of what we're trying to capture, but I think we need to be more focused. Because if effort's not associated with the actual achievement, as some of those examples were, and we start praising kids and they know it's not associated with the achievement, Dweck's already pointed out that kids are onto us. Kids know when we're bullshitting them, when we're saying, great effort, keep the effort up, and they know that their effort isn't leading to growth. And so we need to be more careful about the way we identify and point kids towards the right sort of effort, because effort is more than just time and energy. Often when we talk about effort, all we talk about is time and energy. You've put more effort in if you spent more time on it, or if you put more energy into it. And let's be clear, we're not talking about physical exertion here. It's a cognitive thing we're talking about. But, I put more energy into writing a 30,000 word book than I do into writing an 800 word blog. Now, does that mean I put more effort in? It just results in more words, not better words. And that's really where we start to focus on what we need to look at here. We're not trying to do more. We're trying to get better. The focus here today is that it's about how that time and energy is spent. There are times when we want time and energy to produce our best work, to get it right. There are times when we want it to result in growth. And there are times when we expect it to result in not much at all, other than to tell us what we need to grow. So what we're trying to do here is to work out how that time and energy is best spent to meet our needs. Our focus needs to be on the effect or the efficacy of the effort. What are we trying to do with that effort? Because it's not an effort mindset. I can't say that often enough. It's not an effort mindset. If the type of effort you're putting in isn't leading to growth, then it's probably the wrong sort of effort. And the sort of effort we often want to talk about, not always, but the sort of effort we often want to talk about is the sort of effort that leaves you better off than you were before. And let me explain that. Many of you, because you've been in my workshops, will have seen this diagram. And many of us experience growth like this, that we improve for a while and then we reach this plateau, this performance plateau. And I'm going to call that the bar today. We sort of reach the bar. And the reason we plateau off is that we spend a lot of our time in our comfort zone, and our comfort zone is doing all those things we can already do easily, or those things that we've already mastered, or our performance zone. Performance zone is doing our best. And this line, this performance plateau we're looking at here, you can think of that as your current level of intelligence. The reason you can't do better than that line, the reason you can't perform any better, is you're not smart enough to do anything harder. If you were smarter than that, you'd do more. So the key here is learning how to get smarter, because it's working in that learning zone that will raise the bar. All right, if we can work in that learning zone, master that level of difficulty, learn smart enough to do it, then this is what happens. We actually raise the bar over and over again. Each time we step into the learning zone and master it, we raise the bar. And notice here as we do that the learning zone still stays that one step beyond our current abilities. The performance zone is still one step below our current abilities, but our comfort zone grows. Every time we raise the bar, increase our performance plateau, the number of things that fall into our comfort zone, the things that we can already do, or the things that are easy things we haven't done yet, increases. And it's that sort of raising the bar effort that we often want kids to be involved in, because there's a big difference between learning to do more and becoming better. I know I wasted a lot of kids' time in my classrooms simply asking them to do more, to apply the skills they already had, to not learn to behave more intelligently, but just to exercise the skills they already had and learn more things, rather than developing those habits of mind and becoming better, more intelligent than they were before. And this is where some of you have seen already my effective effort matrix. But I want to put a little bit of a different spin on it today, because I think the way we've talked about it until now has focused on, we want everyone in effective effort. But I'm not sure that's always true. That the effective effort matrix is divided up into where you're applying your efforts. So first question you need to ask is, where are you putting that time and energy? Is it below the bar? All right, is it doing the easy things you haven't done yet, or the things you can already do reliably? Or is it above the bar? Is it in your learning zone, in that area where your standard is going to decrease for a while, you're going to make mistakes, that you're going to struggle for a while? And the other part of the matrix is about how you're applying the effort. Are you applying the effort with just simple basic habits of mind, stuff that's easy? Or are you stretching yourself to use more complex, more demanding, richer, more mature habits of mind? So if you're in this bottom left quadrant, the low effort quadrant, you're cruising. You're doing the easy stuff. And let's face it, sometimes we have to do it. Today, for example, just in my work, I had to book some flights. I had to pay bills. I had to manage a few bits and pieces, all of which took very, very little what we traditionally call effort. But it had to be done. So there are times when I have to do that. But lots of time in there would be detrimental to my overall progress. There are times when you want to be doing your best, when you don't want to be working above the bar. In performance situations, you want to be below the bar, just below the bar, right on your best, working with your most sophisticated habits, but not risking getting things wrong. I mean, just imagine for a moment the gymnast. You get an Olympic gymnast that comes out and tries to perform the new trick they haven't perfected yet, the trick that's still in there above the bar line, that's in their learning zone. That'd be a bit of a risk. These performers come out and they do exactly what they know they can do well without going the one step beyond. The trouble, of course, with never going beyond your best is that you never get better. When you start stepping above the bar and you take those old behaviours into more difficult situations, what we end up in is this ineffective effort. Now, we all have to be there. At times, we have to be in what we call productive struggle. You're in there, you're trying to work it out, you're saying, how the hell does this happen? I don't know how to sort this out, I don't know how to solve this problem. And it is uncomfortable, and it's sitting at the bottom of the pit. You're making mistakes. But the thing there is, if you spend too much time in that struggle, it's not just ineffective effort, it's unproductive. And it's not actually taking you anywhere. And a lot of kids will sit at their desks, working away, head down, bum up, sweat off their brow, wheel spinning, time and energy going through the roof, but progress stopped. Now, if that happens, if progress stops for too long, mistakes aren't being informative anymore, then that's when it really becomes ineffective effort. Because where we want to get to is learning to be smart enough to work on those harder things so that time and energy goes down. And that's where effective effort comes in. You're actually experiencing growth now. You're starting to refine those behaviors and you're actually learning new things, harder things. To put some different words on this bottom corner is about cruising, doing it easy. The performance effort is about doing, and there are times when you have to do that, just do the work. This ineffective effort is about struggle, but it can be productive struggle or unproductive struggle. And this top quadrant is about the growing part. And obviously there are times when we need to be in there as well. So the thought I want to leave you with around effort today is this, that we all need to cruise sometimes. We just don't want to spend too much time doing the easy stuff. There are times when we need to perform, but it shouldn't be all the time. If we get trapped in performance, then we never have the time to actually improve. And I think a lot of us do that. Productive struggle is necessary. There should be times when time and energy are going up, but you should start to see that time and energy go down, because it's effective effort that will lead to growth. And that's what's required in learning situations. And I think the key here, as we start to think about how we now start to value effort, is we need to stop talking about how much of it we use. We need to stop talking about whether it's good effort or bad effort. We need to talk more about the way people engage in effort. So I'm going to suggest that rather than a 1-star, 4-star, good, bad, lots, little type scale, what we need to talk about when we're talking about effort is more like a novice expert type scale. That a novice engages in effort, spends the time and energy in one way. And as you get better and better and better at the way you spend that time and energy, you act more and more like the expert. And an expert is someone who is very, very finely tuned to the way they spend their time and energy. So a couple of examples just to show you what I mean. I banged this rubric together in 20 minutes this afternoon, so it's not polished, but I'll give you a go and then we'll have a chat about it. I think a novice spends most of their time below the bar. They're in their comfort zone, they're in their performance zone, but mainly in their comfort zone. They may be busy learning more, but there's no real stretch yet, and so there's no real growth taking place. So this is the way someone who's just starting out with a new topic, they've got a set of skills with them already, and they can just walk through the early stages. An apprentice, someone who's actually taken the step to try and, on the path to mastery here, will, when they're pushed or directed, work above the bar, but won't do it self-directed. They often have difficulty distinguishing between productive and unproductive struggle, so making that distinction between how long is long enough, trying to work this out myself before I need to seek help. They need a lot of support to move out of that ineffective effort into effective effort. And because of all that, their growth and progress, remember this is what's important, the growth and progress is limited and generally in response to that outside influence. And we can all think of kids that work like this, that kids are in that just churning away, will only get pushed when we push them. A practitioner though, someone who's actually doing the work, spends a lot of time in performance effort. So that they're in the business of doing it and doing it well. They actually avoid working above the bar. And I think we know some of these kids that put enough effort in to do it well, but never push themselves far enough to get better, because they fear this, the decrease in performance that might happen as a result. They're focused on being good and performing to a standard rather than getting better. The next level up I've called learner. And this is the sort of person who frequently stretches themselves beyond above the line, into their learning zone. And this doesn't have to be a kid. I think when I talk to groups about the people they find characteristically successful, I think a lot of them are in this group. They're always pushing themselves just a bit. They're always focused on improving. They're not focused on proving themselves. They're focused on improving themselves. They're able to identify their unproductive effort. So when they're realizing they can't do it on their own, they're quick to seek help and work out how it's done because they expect to be able to do it. They return to performance effort in the appropriate situations. So they know that a lot of the time they've got to be in that productive struggle or in that effective effort, but they know when to come back and perform and do it properly as well. And they do spend some time in low effort, and as a result of those combination of behaviours, they're experiencing an appropriate amount of growth. And an expert, on the other hand, is able to very accurately distinguish between appropriate times for different sorts of effort. They seek to reduce or eliminate the time spent in low effort. I work with some real experts in their fields. I've met some extraordinary people. And one of the things they do that makes them so good at what they do is they chop out all the rubbish. They don't book their own flights. They don't make their own papers. They don't do the stuff that's easy for them. They stay in their performance zone when they need to be, and when they don't need to be there because they're not in public, they're not doing the thing that they've got to be on show for, they put themselves deliberately into that learning zone, constantly trying to seek to improve themselves, to raise that bar. And as a result, they experience some really significant growth. Now, I reckon this rubric here is a good guide to start a conversation. That the idea here is not that the effort is good or bad. What we've got to be looking for is how the effort is being spent. And more importantly, perhaps, how well is the individual directing the application of that learning. And if we started talking about this sort of scale in classrooms, are you applying effort the way a novice does, or are you applying the way a learner does, or an expert does? Then it's about the sort of person they're becoming, the way they're acting, rather than this fuzzy concept of effort. So I'm going to flick the slides off and have a look at the chat box and just invite your first reactions to that sort of idea. A few people are typing away. Thank you for that. Mary, I hope you've got your sound sorted out. And you won't get a copy of the PowerPoint, but I will share with you a recording of the whole presentation, so you can pull the bits and pieces out you need from there. Okay. A few people still writing things in, waiting for them to pop up. Here we go. Even just a little bit of a thumbs up, you found that useful or not. All right, well, I'm not sure. Here we go. So Simon's certainly applied to kids and teachers their work, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. You don't have to be at a high standard to talk this way. It's got to be about the way you're going about. Thanks, Katie. It must be early for you over there in South Africa. Yeah. All right, so the feeling I'm getting here is that it's certainly an idea to continue to flesh out, and I think that expert to novice rubric is something to continue to work on. Cool. All right. I would like to share with you now this idea of rubrics. We spent a little bit longer than I thought about this. I'm really excited about this rubric stuff because I think, one, it's easy, and two, it's powerful. And so I think it's a really useful thing to start thinking about. To give you a brief history of rubrics, the way we've traditionally used it, it used to be about teacher judgment. Teachers, lecturers would look at the work and through their own experience would just know what quality looked like and would tell you what it was. They'd pick it up, look at it, assess it, and tell you what it is, write the grade on the top, and it would be done with. And then we were asked to justify those judgments. So to start off with, we had judgments, teacher judgments, and then we were asked to justify those judgments, so we developed rubrics. And someone said, well, that seems unfair. Really, the information, the student should have that information. And this is where we made the mistake. We took the same rubric that we were using to judge the product after the event and gave it to students before the event. So we designed rubrics to judge work, student output, and we gave those same rubrics to kids before the event. So now students started to feel like they were being judged. And assessment became about who you were, and students started to identify with their grade. And I know we've all got students that will tell us that, you know, they're a C student or they're an A student or whatever it is. And the catch cry that I keep in mind about assessment when I think about mindset is that assessment shouldn't be about who you are. It should always be about where you are and what you're doing to improve. So with that in mind, some of you have seen this first part. The shift I want to make with our rubrics is to shift from categories to continuums. So a lot of the rubrics look like this. What I see when I see that is a category. And students will look at this sort of rubric and say, well, I'm a this, I fit into this box, not that box. And they label themselves as being one of those grades. And the problem, as I've said in workshops, lies with the top and bottom lines. That there's no way to go and know where you've come from. You just are one of these. And that one of the simple things we can do to start breaking down this idea of labeling, categorizing kids is to simply dot the top and bottom lines. Put a exceeds previous level above and a not yet or a previously demonstrated below. And now it just appears as a space on a continuum. And I would even go so far as to do something a bit like this. The 52, 53, 54, 55, that's the level. Now, they're arbitrary numbers. But just to point out that, you know, we're talking about someone at grade 3 here. And so the level you're at, you know, on an ultimate scale is pretty ordinary. But if you got to 52, I'd be rapt with you as a 7-year-old. And I'm going to give you an A. So it becomes more about where you are, and it appears as part of a continuum. Because, as Carol Dweck tells us, that test score, the actual score you might get here, the 52, the 54, only tells you where the child is. It doesn't tell you where they're going to end up. But a lot of kids look at themselves and say, well, I'm only a D, so I can only set my sights this high. Or vice versa, they say I'm an A, so I should easily achieve the very high. And they're not. They're all at a terrible standard compared to where they're capable of going as high-achieving adults. And I'm reminded of a teacher I met at the start of this year who had taught Elon Musk as a year 10 student. He was at a school in South Africa. And I asked this teacher, you know, what was it like? Because, you know, your mind jumps to, you know, a kid like that. And I asked his teacher, what was it like to teach him? And he said, I have no idea who he was. Like, I know he's in my class, but I can barely remember him. He wasn't the top achiever. He wasn't on the honour boards. He wasn't a clever kid. He was just one of the kids. Now, you can't predict from that year 10 science class where that kid's going to end up. Whether they're on the top or whether they're on the bottom, they're just there at that moment in time. It doesn't tell you where they're going to go. And with that idea that it's not about who you are, it's about what you're doing and how you're going about achieving your growth that's most important. I think there are 4 really key elements we can introduce to our rubrics that are going to start transforming rubrics for growth mindsets. So I've taken a rubric that I borrowed from a school that I worked with, and I want to show you how I go through it. Now, let's be clear here, we still want the quality, right? This is not some sort of alternative for standards. It's all about quality, but it's all about teaching kids how they go about behaving in a way to allow them to reach that quality. We want the students to know that it's not about, that it is about, what they do, not who they are, and that they are capable of the growth, and we're expecting them to achieve that growth even if they don't reach it today. So here's the rubric that I've borrowed from a school. Now I've put the arrows top and bottom just to show what I'm doing. But as we read from left to right, what we see here is judgment first. And I think that's a mistake to start with. That for kids, particularly kids who see the world through that fixed lens, they don't read any further. They just look at what you've circled or ticked or the grade they've got, everything to the right of it, just useless description, justification. I don't need it justified. Thank you very much. You've already told me what I am. I'm outstanding, high or medium. That's all I need to know. That's how someone with this mindset views it, and they won't read past the judgment on the left to actually read what they would describe as a justification. So the first thing, because we read left to right, I want to flip our rubrics. I want to talk about the description first and then the result. So it becomes a if-then type statement rather than you are because. It's an if-then. Now, in this particular rubric, they use the word work. Now, in this context, they're not actually talking about work. They're talking about the output of the work, the assignment, the project, the whatever it is. So when they say work is of an exceptional standard or a high standard or a good standard, the school is actually talking about the product is of an exceptional standard or a high standard. Now, as you look at this, have a look at the language that's used here. The focus is on adjectives. It's about the quality of the work. But they haven't actually done the work yet. Most students will get this rubric at the start of a unit of work. So what I want to look at is, rather than the description of the work that's produced at the end, I want to switch now away from adjectives and towards verbs to say what you need to do to produce the work of that standard. So what we're going to look at is the way I change these words: demonstrates, acquisition, and others. Have a look at this. What I've done is I've gone through just at the top level, the outstanding level there, and instead of saying, I'll flip back, work is of a high standard or an exceptional standard, you complete work to an exceptional standard. You demonstrate attainment of skills. And look at the one underneath it to see the difference. So complete work to an exceptional standard, demonstrate attainment of skills associated with the task, apply information. Instead of work is of a high standard, demonstrates attainment of skills associated, identification, application of relevant information. You actually have to apply the information. So if we complete this, and in completing it, I add what I call a positive presupposition. At the moment, all we've got is a description of either the standard of the work, but I want to flip that to the verbs to talk about the description of the behaviour that will lead to the standard. I also want to add what I call a positive presupposition to the top of the rubric. So rather than it being an if you, it's a when you. The expectation here is that when you do these things, these verbs that we've now put throughout this rubric, when you complete the work to an exceptional standard, when you demonstrate the attainment of skills, when you apply the information, when you acquire the knowledge, you'll get the result outstanding. But when you're only doing these things, you'll get a medium or a high. And by building in that presupposition, this idea here is we're not trying to say find out what sort of person you are. We're saying when you do it this way, you'll get that. But you'll also, when you do it the next way, you'll do it this way. And I think that leads us into the last part of sort of adding on to this rubric, is that typically what we do, now we're giving this rubric out beforehand. We can still use the other rubric, by the way, at the end of the process to judge and justify. Here we're trying to guide. Here we're trying to show kids that you will get these marks when you do these things. Typically what we do at the end of an assessment period, is to then give some feedback. Now, I had a chat to some teachers over the last few weeks when I've been doing some workshops, and I said to them, you know, if you got students who had completed work to a good standard, demonstrate the attainment of most skills, applied relevant information in a general way, had reached this medium level, could you tell me the sort of feedback you'd give them? And pretty much every teacher said, yeah, well, it's going to be specific to the individual kid, but generally speaking, I'd be saying this and this and this and this. We know that when kids are doing this medium level, we'll be saying these sorts of things to them to go to the high level. So my suggestion is that we don't wait till the end. If our presupposition is that this kid is capable of growth when they behave in a particular way, and if we see them behaving in one way, we're going to tell them how to behave in another, that we give them that advice up front, that we engage in feed forward rather than feed back. So that these kids, remember, you're giving this out at the start of a unit of work. So they're told that when you find yourself completing work to a good standard, demonstrate most skills, apply relevant information in a general way, you're looking at getting a medium. But you're going to need to do and fill in this next box to go up to a high level, because the expectation is that every student is capable of that high level. So the idea here is that to create rubrics with positive mindset movers, and you might want to go back through the video and look through each of the examples I've given, is that we build in positive presuppositions. It's not about if students do this, it's about when they do it. That we use verbs instead of adjectives, not what they're doing, but how they've got to do it to reach the standard. We put them in a continuum rather than categorize them, make sure they see what they're doing to move through and improve. We cast our statements in the future, not the past. So it's when you do, not if you have. And we provide them with the feed forward, not the feedback. I mean, we'll still give them feedback at the end of the process, but we want to give it to them when it's useful, at the start of the process, so that they're seeing what they need to do to move themselves from one level to another. Because, you know, bringing it back to the mindset side of things, there's some criticism in this. This is a whole other topic, but there's a lot of criticism now about growth mindsets and how the interventions we're using don't work. And one of the editorials that came up to talk about what it was that, you know, why this was going wrong, said, believe and you can achieve, ? Growth mindset interventions fail to result in student increases in performance. And, you know, you get this sort of stuff. Believe and you can achieve. Well, the person who put that heading in rightly found that believing is not enough for you to achieve. You can't just believe. Believing might lead you to act, but it's acting effectively that will make you achieve. And so what this rubric has tried to do in the other work around effort is to point out what sort of effective actions you need to take in order to achieve. Because from the growth mindset perspective, I'm looking at that kid in my grade 3 classroom, my year 9 classroom, and saying there is nothing about who you are that stops you achieving whatever you want to achieve, other than the sorts of behaviours you learn to adopt to take you there. And so I'll flick off the screen now and go back to the chat box. Ask for your feedback, your thoughts, your reflections about that, the rubrics, and yeah, go from there. So, how are you feeling about the rubric side of things? Certainly, again, something we're building on, something that we're not changing what's being assessed, but we're building rubrics to introduce the positive mindset movers rather than some of those negative mindset movers that categorize kids and put those boundaries around them. Thanks, Jacqueline. Where are you, Jacqueline? Are you in Australia somewhere? Debbie, absolutely. I want to give you more examples. In fact, I would invite anyone who's on the webinar now, if you've got a rubric you're playing with that you'd like to have a play with these ideas, send it to me. I would love to play with these and to start thinking about how this works in more than just a, the example I gave was a fairly generic, sort of rubric, which is why I chose it. It lent itself to changing things. And so if you've got rubrics that you use around assessing student performance, flick them to me, and the more we play with them, the more we try and work in some of these ideas, the better we're going to get. And I think the more practical it will become. My hope is that using your rubrics, using my own reflective, some of the rubrics that I have here with me from experts, we can refine this model and give you some more steps about how to get there. I was actually talking to an assessment expert recently at a conference, and he got under my skin. I couldn't quite work out what was bothering me about what he was saying. Like, he was really good, but something was niggling at me. And I asked him, I stopped him during one of the breaks and said, I think I've worked out what's annoying me. Can you tell me, does your rubric assess the student or their work? And he couldn't answer the question. He didn't know if his assessment was trying to assess the student or their work. And I would suggest that those rubrics that we give at the end of the process should be assessing the student work. Absolutely, that's what it's all about. It's about what students do to produce that quality of work. But these ones we're talking about here, these formative assessments, these growth mindset assessments at the beginning, they're not assessments, they're guides, are all about helping guide the students towards that final piece. All right, folks, well, I've taken up about 45 minutes of your time, and I really value your time. I know a lot of you have traffic to fight on the way home from school this afternoon, some of us on the way to school. So I will stay here now for another 10 or 15 minutes responding to any questions, but if that's all the time you've got today, thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to continuing to work with you, and keep an eye out on your emails for those 3 new events, because I'm really excited about the New Habits of Mind workshop that's coming out in Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane and Sydney next term. Online Growth Mindset Teacher, which is really exciting and really powerful for teams of teachers to be involved in. But importantly, that day, the day before Australia Day in Brisbane, really powerful event for schools that are trying to run this throughout the whole school, that want to send a team of teachers along, get a bundle of resources to use with their staff throughout the year. Yeah, I'm really excited about working with a room like that. Can you imagine having 50 people in a room, all committed to working with their whole staff, all sharing their resources, all sharing their ideas, with my expertise and my resources at your disposal for the year. It's going to be a great day and a great year for those schools. So thank you very much, folks. I will stay here, but for the rest of you, safe trip home, and best of luck with the work you are doing. Thanks.